A story a day with Jeff Koinange.
Are you ready now? So this is Liberia Part 2. Remember the last time I told you it was Christmas Day 1989. Charles Taylor, with his group of about 28 to 35 men, have had training in Libya, have come through Burkina Faso, and are on their way to Liberia, on the border of Liberia. Liberia's northern border with Burkina Faso. Okay? No, eastern border, sorry.
Burkina Faso,
Yes.
the land of upright men.
Thank you. So that's Charles Taylor.
Did I get it right?
100% land
Burkina
of
Faso,
land of
upright men.
not upright as in sitting upright,
No,
but
the upright morally, the uncorrupted,
thank you, incorruptible men.
incorruptible, Maraga kind of thing.
Thank you. Maraga is from Burkina Faso. So Charles Taylor is coming in from the east. Everybody wants to get rid of Master Sergeant Samuel Doe, who had taken over. Remember, I had told you in 1980, walked into the presidential palace,
Shot.
put a gun inside President Talbot's mouth, and pulled the trigger. So Doe is now ruling with fear. Political opponents are either being killed, jailed, or they're fleeing the country. Here's the twist. There were two other rebel movements that wanted to get rid of Samuel Doe. So Taylor's coming from the east, and there were two others coming in from just outside Monrovia. One led by a guy called Prince Johnson, and another one led by a different guy called Roosevelt Johnson. No relation. Prince Johnson, Roosevelt Johnson. Three rebel groups, all aiming to get rid of Doe. Taylor is coming slowly. He gets to the middle of the country, a town called Gabanga. It's spelled Gbangba. Banga is how it's pronounced, but the writing is like Gabanga, but it's pronounced Banga. That's where he set up his headquarters. Now it's about 2 hours drive from Monrovia. These other rebels are still in there. Samuel Doe is calling on the AU now to come in and do something about OAU then, to come in and do something about it. They send West African peacekeepers. Now the peacekeepers are in Monrovia protecting the people as these two rebel groups which are already on the outside of the capital trying to get in. Massacres, fights between peacekeepers and these young what they call small boys unit, because that's what they mainly were. In fact, that story I told you about General Butt Naked, remember I told you?
I remember.
Him and his whole brigade would strip off their clothes, splash on all kinds of ointments on themselves, and go into battle with just their boots and nothing else, and their guns. They called it the Butt Naked Brigade.
The butt naked
Brigade, that's what
they would go to war naked.
butt naked. And they would fight in the streets against these peacekeepers. It was madness.
So they're fighting
Yes.
naked. Kengele.
Killer Kid Kengele,
Kengele Nalia.
Capedo, Ring a Ding Ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Oh my God. Jesus Christ, son of a carpenter.
Led by this guy called General Butt Naked.
So the general himself is butt naked.
And he's like 18 years old.
Oh my
He
God.
calls himself General. They're carrying Kalashnikovs, all kinds of weapons. God knows where they got them from. So anyway, that's one group. And then there's another group led by Roosevelt Johnson. Taylor is still coming in. So slowly.
Taylor is coming in.
From Banga.
Butt naked is coming in.
Yes.
And Johnson is also coming
Yes.
in. Johnson is clothed.
Yes.
So one Johnson is naked, and the other Johnson is dressed. And
And all the Johnsons are out.
okay.
So they close in on the executive mansion where now Samuel Doe is holding. Now he has very few troops left. He's in the Israeli-built, heavily fortified executive mansion. Finally, Prince Johnson and his group break in. Before Taylor's able to come in, they break into the castle, palace, mansion, and they grab Samuel Doe. They grab him, they kill all his men around him. They grab him. In the meantime, there's a French crew outside, and Prince Johnson says, "Hey guys, you want to film something?" He brings them in. They set up the camera. Doe is sitting where you're sitting, and now they start interrogating him. As they're doing that, they slice off one ear in front of the camera. And Doe is screaming, former head of state, feared by everybody. Slice off the other ear. He is screaming, blood everywhere, all over his clothes and everything. They strip him down. You know what happened next? Sliced it right off. In front of the camera. Sliced it. Doe is screaming. He's saying, please leave me. I haven't done it. Please. And he's pleading for his life. On camera. Finally, Prince Johnson says, enough of this nonsense. Grabs his gun and shoots him in the head. Boom, 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 boom. In front of the cameras. Takes over the executive mansion. Taylor is still coming in. Ecomog is helpless. The other Johnson, he's still trying to get in as well. So there's a three-way. Three-way. Monrovians
So the
are
chief,
suffering.
the chief has been killed.
Yes.
Johnson
Prince Johnson
is
has taken over.
Yes. There's another Johnson outside.
Who's outside the gates.
And Taylor is also coming.
He's still coming.
Hey.
Ecomog, the peacekeepers, cannot control this city. Monrovia, 200,000 people have been killed already. Bodies lying in the streets, vultures feeding on bodies, dogs feeding on the same bodies. It was horrific, Jalas. Horrific. African leaders are looking at all this. Nobody can do a thing. They call for peace, they call for talks, they call these guys because Taylor's coming. And when Taylor comes, it's gonna be a bloodbath. Right? Or in the movie, it says a bath of blood. You know, the movie Lord of War. You should check that out with Nicolas Cage. Anyway, talks are called. Finally, these level heads prevail, and these leaders meet. The two Johnsons and Charles Taylor. And they say, you know what we do? Let's call for elections. This is after 200,000 people have been killed. Let's call for elections. And they call. Finally, everybody agrees. They call for elections. But Taylor, in his campaigning, he says, if you don't elect me, I'm going back to the bush. And you know what I can do. They ended up electing him.
Taylor.
Yes, he becomes president, and he brings one of the Johnsons into his cabinet, this Roosevelt Johnson. He brings him into his cabinet. Now he's calming the various sides. Prince Johnson refuses. He flees because he's now a wanted man. His pictures are on camera. He's killing somebody. He flees to Nigeria, becomes a priest in Nigeria, and now he's preaching in Lagos. Taylor's in charge.
So this other Johnson, butt naked, is also a minister.
Butt naked now has taken off to America because he's also a wanted man. He joins a ministry, comes back to Liberia. He calls himself Reverend Joshua Bly. And he's preaching on the same streets where he was slaughtering people. And the people can see him. They say, this is the guy. This is General Butt Naked, although he's clothed now. And he says, yes, I am General Butt Naked. This is his sermon. Huh? I killed your family. I killed your sister, your mother, your brother. But please forgive me.
I'm saved now.
I'm saved now. And they forgave him. Liberians. They said, it's okay. This is Reverend Joshua Bly. It's okay. Crazy place. So I met, we're in the executive mansion, right now, when I was there. And I'm meeting Taylor's guys, because Taylor surrounds himself with these former child soldiers who are now young men. I mean, they're in the 20s now. So they had a big, huge bodyguard. His real name was Max Farian Jiba. But everybody knew him as Bulldog, because he looked as big as a bulldog. I told you about the nom de guerres of his unit.
No, you didn't tell me.
I didn't tell you.
Go on.
So there was Bulldog, and then there was another guy who was darker than you and I, man. Dark. They called him Senegalese. Dark and mean, carried like 4 guns on him. Taylor's most trusted aide was a guy called Benjamin Yetin. People called him 50. Tiny little guy. They called him 50. And I asked them one day, why do they call him 50? They said because in the first battle with him and Taylor, he killed 50 men. So they just called him 50. What? These are the guys Taylor surrounded himself. There's another guy called General Cuckoo Dennis. Why did they call him Cuckoo? Because they said every time he killed somebody, he would rip his heart out and drink the blood from the heart while it was still warm. No, I'm not making this stuff up. This is stuff I saw and people I met. Cut a long story short, 2003, another rebel, Taylor's still in command, right? Another rebel group now forms, calling itself LURD, Liberians United for Reforms and Democracy, LURD. They said enough of what Taylor's doing, it's time to get rid of him. And they start, just like Taylor did, they start their campaign. Taylor says, I am not leaving here. President George W. Bush at the time, he says, Taylor needs to leave. He's also gotten into this mix. He says, Taylor needs to leave now. Taylor refuses. He says, I'm not going anywhere. You'll have to kill me. Negotiations happen. Lerd is closing in on Monrovia. It's getting ugly again. People are fleeing. People are dying now because Taylor is refusing to leave. The rebels start pounding. We were in the U.S. Embassy one time. They were pounding the U.S. Embassy with mortar shells, landing in the garden of the U.S. Embassy. Can you imagine in Monrovia? Horrific scenes. Anyway, finally, Taylor decides, I will leave because President Obasanjo of Nigeria convinced him, I will give you exile in my country. Nobody will touch you while you're in my country. Obasanjo now took charge. Taylor agrees. August 11th, 2003. Taylor agrees to leave the country, hands over power to his deputy. He boards a plane which Obasanjo had chartered, Air Force One of Nigeria. Taylor boards that plane, ends up in Nigeria, a place called Calabar in Cross River State. Calabar. He stays there for like 3 years. 3 years, nobody bothers him. Surrounded by God, surrounded by family, he's living a great life in exile. Comes time to Nigeria re-election. Obasanjo has done 2 terms, but he wants a third. The country says, no, it's not in the constitution. You cannot have a third. Right? He says, you know what? We can change this. Let me go talk to the American. American said, you know what? Come and talk to us. Maybe we could work out a plan. As America says, we want something in exchange. Remember that guy you've been holding up in Calabar all this time? We want him because he has to answer to crimes against humanity at The Hague. Obasanjo says, no, I can't. I gave him my word. I cannot have this. I cannot. I said, what? Do you want a third term? He says, well, maybe. So come to America, we'll talk about it. As Obasanjo is heading to Washington, D.C., guess what happens? Taylor suddenly gets word that they're about to come after him. He gets in a convoy, 3-4 cars, and drives out of Nigeria. He drives towards the northern border, a place called Maiduguri. Gets to the border. A very smart immigration clerk sees him and he says, hey, I know that guy. And he calls. Taylor's held at the border. Planes fly in from Abuja. They arrest him. All this is now breaking news. It's flying all over the place. They arrest him. They take him to Abuja. From Abuja, they say, where do you want this guy? We've arrested him trying to flee the country. They said, take him to Sierra Leone, where he started the madness. They fly him into Freetown. We arrive in Freetown just as the helicopter's landing. Charles Taylor, the guy who was most feared in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, he comes out of the helicopter in handcuffs and leg irons. Can you imagine? Former president, former military, out of the helicopter in leg irons, straight into a jail in Freetown. And then they said, oh, well, the hearing was the next day. We attended, we filmed the whole thing. But then the people were saying, you know what, this is too dangerous. If Taylor is tried in neighboring Sierra Leone, Liberia will burn. Put him in a plane, flew him straight to The Hague. And that's where he was on trial for the next 6 months to a year. In the end, he got a 50-year jail sentence, never to be released. He was 65 years old when he was convicted. For 50 years, do the math on that. He'll come out when he's 115, if he's lucky. And that's the story.
Hot Breakfast with Jeff and Jelano.